About one more minute and we'll get going this evening. Well, my battery's going to run out. Dan's battery is going to run out. Everybody's just going to run out of batteries tonight. So we better get this meeting started then. I will call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. Please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Tlingit Ani. Sarah, roll call, please.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Present.
Mr. Mosher,
Here.
Ms. Duncan. Here. Mr. Yestad,
Here.
Mr. Christensen.
Here.
Mr. Pike
Here.
and Ms. Carlson.
Here.
Any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? I do have one. We need to pull the service award for Robert Sam. He's unable to join us this evening, so we'd like to present it in person to him when he's able to join. So that'll come forward at a future date when he's available. Anything else from the body? All right, moving on to special reports. Is there anyone here for government to government this evening? Municipal boards, commissions, committees? Municipal departments? School board?
Good evening. It's good to be here with you guys. Thank you for having me. Blossom Teal Olson, Sitka School Board President. I just wanted to give a quick update as to what we are doing within the school district. District-wide, we're currently going through the spring break, and which is a fun time for our students. So I hope all of our families are doing well during this time. School board wise, March 2nd, we held the interviews and for Helen Cheek and Steve Bradshaw. This is, of course, the interviews for the interim superintendent, because Superintendent Hauser put in his resignation. His last day will be June 30th. So the interview process is well underway. We are currently working to try to move forward in that arena to make sure that we are all good to go when the time comes. So we are currently working on filling the interim superintendent. We are working with ASB as well, Long Garrison, who used to be the Sitka School Board President as well. Very happy that they are helping us out. And then on March 9th, we held our budget work session. So I want to personally thank Assemblyman Mosher and Assemblyman Pike for attending. We are also working very hard to make sure that we are well informed about the upcoming budget meetings that we are going to have with you, and also in order to present a well-rounded budget that will serve all of our families, educators, and students. Other than that, that's pretty much what is going on. We've had a lot of other meetings, policy-wise, work session-wise. So, you have any questions?
Great. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. And then finally, students and guests. That'll bring us to persons to be heard this evening. This is public participation for any item off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes.
Good evening, Assembly. My name is Richard Ween. It's been a rather event-filled time since we last met. But today is very important because you must know, and I hope celebrate Pi Day, which is March 14th, 3.14. I can see by the faces here that this doesn't excite you, but it excites me. And it's important because this is something that should be taught probably at the 6th grade level and increased in complexity throughout. And it is, I'm sure if we asked randomly what pi was, what the number was, how it's derived and what are its uses, I'm sure even this august body may come up a little short. And I think that these are important things that need to be spoken about in school. Other little things, do people here know what Pudong Development Bank is and what relationship it has had in our financial quagmire of late? I'm sure you've all heard the core CPI and the regular CPI. I'm sure you know what the results of the findings for real wages were and with the mortgage rates. And these are things that all affect Sitka. I'm sure you heard that Moody's, which rates the economic issues, that they have downgraded the US banking system outlook from stable to negative. How will that affect Sitka? Every time I read these things, I think about how things will affect Sitka. We were also, I'll say, a mixed blessing with Willow, which was approved by the Biden administration, but really don't be fooled. There won't be any oil coming out of there for years. And it, in essence, makes Biden a bit of a hypocrite because he said during his campaign for election, I guarantee you we're going to end fossil fuels. So I think it's a bit of hypocrisy. But of interest is Mary Patola stated that Alaskans share the desire to phase out fossil fuels, and she called the Willow Project gap oil until the world can move beyond oil. Well, what date is that? And so I ask you about fossil fuels, and there's a question which I will keep bringing up here at the Assembly. Where do cruise ships fit in to this ever declining fossil fuel usage? You have to remember that even the smaller cruise liners can use up to 80,000 gallons of fuels a day. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening? Any item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, that'll bring us to consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, approve the meeting minutes from the February 23rd, 28th, and March 2nd meetings.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment on a consent agenda? Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve the consent agenda, Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
and Mr. Pike.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
Brings us to unfinished business, item B.
I move to approve ordinance 2023-03 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2023 mid-year supplemental appropriations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 23-03. Is there any public comment?
Richard Ween, these supplemental appropriations were discussed last time, but there is a reason for second readings. I'm not going to go over all the individuals. It's a total of about $280,000. The one that keeps coming forward in my mind is the water fund, which was approximately $170,000. And the description for what it's really going to be used for was rather incomplete. $100,000 for unexpected water main breaks. And I think this is an important issue, and the city needs to give us an update as to what their expectations are. Last time we were heard in a budget meeting that they wanted to fill up a $500,000 emergency fund so they wouldn't have to keep coming back to the city. The $70,000 for the water fund was for utility costs of running the secondary filtration plant. Now, what wasn't described in the memo was, is this going to be a recurring fee? Was this a one-off or what? I think that it's important for people to have it in writing what this money is going for. And it would be nice to have more complete memos. So thank you very much.
Any other comment on ordinance 23-03? Assembly deliberation? Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2023-03 on second and final reading, Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
yes,
and Mayor Eisenbeiß.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Second and final reading on item B.
Brings us to new business this evening. Item C, please.
I move to approve the proposed adjustments to the Gary Paxton Industrial Park GPIP Port Tariff Fee Schedule, Port Tariff number 5, as recommended by the GPIP Board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Gary, do you have a brief introduction for this item or?
Hi, Gary White with the Gary Paxton Industrial Park Board. So every year, the Gary Paxton Board sits down and they kind of review the tariff. When the tariff was put in place, it wasn't a solid document, but a living document in how to best use that facility to meet the needs of the community. And the main changes this year is we want to make sure that we're mirroring the harbor rates, so we're not pulling from one facility to the other. And then the other thing was we talked to some of the other commercial facilities in town that accept cruise ships, and we wanted to make sure that our rates were comparable with theirs also. So that's what we're doing is we're putting our cruise passenger rates at, the dockage fees similar to what other people are doing. And then also we increased our head tax fees. We've already kind of, Stan and I've had discussions with the industry, and it seems to be appropriate. So I don't think we're going to drive any business away. And then other than that, we're just looking at the entire wharfage. We just increased that to 8.3% to mirror last year's rates. And I think what you might notice in here is the board's motion is that whatever rate you all pass for the harbor department later in your budget cycle, GPIP's rates will then mirror that. So that's my briefing.
Great, thank you. We may call you up for questions later if we have them. Is there any public comment on the proposed tariff schedule, tariff number 5?
Richard Ween. I know it's a curse. I like numbers, including pi. Some of the numbers are, there's a $3,000, this is for the viewing public, there's a $3,000 flat fee for boats of a length of 150 to 400 feet. And one thing I found that was interesting was that there's a passenger vessel fee. It was $4, and that was for cruise and tourist type head taxes. And now I don't know whether that's considered the state fee or whether it goes directly to GPIP and or the city. So that was not explained, but I like the idea of a passenger vessel fee. So if it goes to the city, I think it's a great idea. If it goes to the state, well, it's just the same stuff. So thank you.
Any other public comment on the port tariff number 5? Assembly deliberation?
I guess being the liaison of the GPIP and harbors, the one thing I did like about this is that it's going to mirror the harbor rates, whatever we choose for years upcoming, because it seems like at least once, twice, 3 times a year, harbors and GPIP are always trying to get on the same page and mirroring one another, so they're not competing infrastructure. So I think this is a great step to make it a little more seamless and fluent. So and about the fees is I do believe, maybe Gary could correct me if I'm wrong, that it's split between harbors and GPIP. Yeah. So just answering that.
Yeah, appreciate that. I do appreciate the rates mirroring each other. I know when we got the dock out there, the goal was not to pull vessels from the harbor system, but to supplement. So anything else from the assembly? Sarah?
Hey, on the motion to approve the tariff fee schedule, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
and Mr. Pike.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on item C.
Item D, please.
I move to approve resolution 2023-10 on first and final reading, implementing a flat rate dockage fee and passenger wharfage fee for the port wall.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Stan, do you have a brief introduction for this one?
Good evening, Stan Elias and Harbor Master. I'll say that I think Gary White stole my thunder here. I'm just, we simply want to be comparative to GPIP as well as private enterprise.
Appreciate it. That was brief. You can come up here more often. We may call you back if there's any questions. Thank you,
Okay,
Stan.
thank you.
Is there any public comment on resolution 23-10?
In the packet, there was a little more detail as to the amount, excuse me, Richard Ween is my name. Numbers are my game. And of interest here is that this was about wharfage fees, and this is about the port wall. I presume it is by the Marine Service Center there. I know that many years ago it was deemed dangerous, and there was consideration of not allowing anybody to tie up there, but after many years it has proved to be serviceable, and I know that we received a grant to repair it. Of interest is that the boats basically, I don't think can be larger than 300 feet, and the amount of tie up there is $2,250. If it goes from 185 to 300 feet. What's important is that they even gave a projected income for 23, and that was $26,000, which is nice. Also, I noticed that there is a passenger wharfage fee. I don't know whether that is the same as a head tax or whatever, but but it was written, maybe it was a typographical error, that it's $5 per passenger. And again, I don't know whether this fee goes to the city in coffers or whether this is the state fee. Precision in explaining these things in the memos, I think are important because inquiring minds want to know. So thank you very much.
Is there any other public comment on resolution 23-10? Assembly deliberation? Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve resolution 2023-10 on first and final reading, Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosher.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item D.
Item E, please.
I move to approve resolution 2023-08 on first and final reading, authorizing the municipal administrator to apply for and execute a grant for the transportation alternative set aside from the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program with the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities for the safety improvements for crossing the state right-of-way Sawmill Creek Road at Raptor Way.
Second.
Kevin, you had the easy job that time. It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 23-08. Melissa, did you have an introduction for this one?
Good evening, Mayor and Assembly members. Melissa Henshaw, Public and Government Relations Director. So as you will recall from the last meeting, this is the resolutions coming forward for the crossings. We're partnering with DOT. If you would choose to do so, we're going to use CPV, those are always so tricky, funds for it at 5.01% for the cost of the project. So included in the packet was the scope, schedule, and estimate provided by DOT, which was required for this program. Looks to be about a 3-year process and with construction in that 3rd year. If the grant is awarded, which we would be expected to know in May, the South Coast region anticipates entering into an agreement that was similar to the Peterson and Halibut Point Road crossing that we did with them, with the exception that the project delivery and construction is done by DOT due to the funding requirements. This will include SICA taking on liability and maintenance for the crossing infrastructure, including replacement at the end of life expectancy. The South Coast region stated that they will assume responsibility for striping of the crosswalks. So an option here going forward, if there are concerns with the maintenance and operations and replacement at the end of life expectancy, is to approve the resolutions which would allow us to continue to move forward with the application so DOT can score it on their timeline. And if we are awarded, then staff could always come back to the assembly, review that draft agreement and permit language before committing to the project. So at that time, if the assembly does not wish to move forward with the project, then the awarded funding would be reallocated to the next project in line. Just a brief note that the packet materials had a clerical error on them. The Harbor Drive estimate had the Raptor Way title on it. The numbers are correct. It just, the title was incorrect, and we have received the corrected paperwork from DOT for that. So if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. If we do, we'll call you back up. Is there any public comment on resolution 23-08?
Good evening, Richard Ween. To quote, I think it's Mark Knopfler, or paraphrase him, money for nothing, crosswalks for free. The amount, it was brought up last time, the amount of money that the crosswalks will cost, even though I know what may appear to be something simple to me, is basically an obscenity. If the city wants to give, if the state or feds want to give some money, let them give the several $millions for these things to the city so we can utilize it for, I think, more quality of life issues. If you look at the at the photographs on where this is going to be. And anybody who lives in Sitka knows where people cross up on Sawmill Creek, because it's to get to the post office, it's to get to Cascade Creek. People come out of Totem Park in several different places. They come out from Jeff Davis Street. So this is clearly fully for tourists, so forth. But if you put this down by Raptor Way, do you think that people are going to, off-season, going to walk down to that crosswalk if they come out of the park and then walk down there and cross? They're not going to. They come from the trailer park up there and they cross, and people are going to cross. So if you're going to make a crosswalk, at least make it to where Sitkans are going to be able to use it. And I don't believe, coming from a big city, jaywalking is something that is just going to happen. And by putting it there, I don't believe it'll necessarily work. And that's why the money should be repurposed. There are other cities that utilize chains to prevent people from crossing where you shouldn't, or little walls to keep people in line to make sure. And I think Ketchikan is one of those places which tried to cattle drive, excuse the term, cattle drive tourists, and that's what it is. And I think that's a quality issue for Sitka. The solution is to cap tourism, and if you want to paint lines in the street, that's fine, but I don't think that overall year-round Sitkans will observe them, especially in the non-tourist time. So, you know, I think there's a lot more thought than just a freebie here, but it shouldn't be just to Raptor Way. What happens if the Raptor Center goes under? You think anyone's going to pay attention to that crosswalk there? So you need to make it be thoughtful and look to the future as to the what ifs. So I hope the Raptor Center has a long and hardy future, but if it's not there, it is a very costly project which will have no utility or use.
Any other comment on item resolution 23-08?
Chris Spivey, I wasn't actually planning on speaking, but to this item, just something to keep in mind also is that we have tractor trailers that run that line of road a lot. I mean, it's basically the only way that Arrowhead Transfer can get into town, as well as several other places like Sitka Ready Mix, things of that nature. If you put a crosswalk in that area, not only will tourists as well as normal public not really even think about maybe looking both ways, they're just going to see a crosswalk and just step right out. Stopping a vehicle of that size is not easy. Granted, it is only 35 miles an hour, but it is still something that if somebody just steps out because they have the right of way, it could become a safety issue. So just something to think about. Thank you.
Anyone else on the resolution 23-08? Assembly deliberation? Kevin?
Just thank you for your comments. I'm going to approve this because it's applying for a grant, and like as Melissa said, we're not bound to this. I think it's worth moving forward. And the comment that was made about sometimes the public, when they do have the right of way, don't really think. That's just something to think about. I haven't considered that, but I still, for now, I think we should move forward with this application. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, just the fact that we aren't necessarily voting to do this, the fact that we're just applying for the grant. And if we get it, then we'll have future assembly will have the right to actually make the call. And I think that's at this point, it's just maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. And so, I mean, I was thinking about would I really want a crosswalk right there in the middle of it straight away? But again, at this point, I'm sure the first thing the state would want to do is some sort of a study, and that may kill this off anyway. So,
Chris?
Yeah, there are a couple things I'm not a fan of on this. Obviously, the overall project cost, I do believe is high, but maybe that is with something that I read in the packet here of a installation and construction of a pedestrian refuge island. I don't really like the idea of a refuge island on that stretch of road. I see that as a potential, I don't know exactly what it would look like, but you know, is that gonna have curbing or you know, some obstruction that maybe plow trucks would have to dodge? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot more that I need to know to really rule on that, but it is definitely a tourist crosswalk. And I don't know totally how I feel on that. I mean, I feel like they're gonna cross there no matter what, whether there's a crosswalk or not, whether we fence it or not. There's been perfectly good signage to show the tourists where to cross to go to Raptor Way, and they don't listen. So I'm probably, you know, I'm gonna vote to pursue the grant just because I know that there's still another opportunity to look at this and maybe say no in the future. But there's definitely a few concerns I have with it in general. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to put that out there.
I would agree, Chris. If this comes forward with a weird pedestrian island in the middle, it's going to be hard pressed to gain my vote for final approval. But I need to see more, know more before I could just straight up say no as well. I can be convinced that a refuge island in the middle of Sawmill Creek is also the best way to go, but it seems odd and out of place to me. And if people think the assembly moves slow and city government moves slow, 3 years to put up a blinky light and some paint on the road, the state's got us beat on that one for sure. In 3 years, who knows if we're even going to need it by then. I guess we'll have to keep updated, and chances are not a lot of us sitting here would be voting on it at that point either. So historical knowledge will be good on this one. So John and Melissa, I don't know if you want to take some thoughts back to DOT on the potential. The assembly's not very keen on the pedestrian refuge, and maybe they can convince us otherwise. Open to talking, but it sounds as if there's multiple members that are kind of hesitant on that. So anything else from the body? Sarah?
Okay, and the motion to approve resolution 2023-08 on first and final reading, Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yeah.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
and Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item E.
Brings us to item F.
I move to approve resolution 2023-09 on first and final reading, authorizing the municipal administrator to apply for and execute a grant for the transportation alternative set aside from the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program with the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities for the state right-of-way Harbor Drive Improvement Safe Pedestrian Crossing Project.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 23-09. Melissa, did you have an introduction on this one as well for us? Thank you.
Melissa Henshaw, Public and Government Relations Director. Not much else to add, but that is why the costs are so high on these two, because they are talking about the refuge island. But in preliminary discussions with DOT, I don't think that they were too keen on that idea either. I think we're looking at more like our RFBs, so.
Great, thank you. Public comment on resolution 23-09.
Good evening, Richard Ween. This is another Mark Knopfler. the important thing here is the way things are moving along, and I never really liked it, is that once you make a grant and you submit it, it's kind of like good faith. You have parameters, you have a description, you send it in, and this is what you're going to do. I know nothing is ever written in stone, but if you don't like this and don't like that, especially its location, et cetera, the costs and so forth are really based on what the grant is. And I think that this is just disingenuous in how things go, but it also costs staff time. And again, this part of it is also extremely costly. This, if you look at the packet, has the places across from Harrigan Centennial Hall. Again, you're going to need chains. That reminds me of a song. But also you might need walls like other cities. If you look at the city and if people are on Lincoln Street, how many different ways that people filter out onto Harbor Drive, it's unbelievable. And so to have it there, you're going to have a real temptation to, I'll say, jaywalk. And so the basic bottom line is you either conduct people, you can hire more crossing guards like we had when I was in elementary school, or you can chain it or wall it off to direct people. And otherwise, now take this for a solution, just close Harbor Drive down, okay? And just we'll have Lincoln Street, Harbor Drive. It'll be just a total, I'll say, Disneyland in Southeast. And so, again, you're going to pass it because it's just a pass through, but there are so many points of egress there that I think it's, again, it needs to be thought out. They talk about 3,000 people crossing there a day when there are high levels of passengers, but they don't really say where they're crossing. And where they're crossing, according to my observation, everywhere, whenever they see the cars slow down. And there can be other issues, other ways to solve this problem. And again, you can solve it by reducing the number of tourists to a more appropriate and reasonable amount. So vote away. And the good news is it'll be years before we see it.
Anyone else on resolution 23-09? Assembly deliberation? Sure.
Same as last time. I mean, again, I'm not entirely crazy about the idea necessarily, but I'm actually a bit curious if we're throwing the problem at the state, if they might come up with something, their engineers, something that isn't going to stop traffic at an awkward turn. So I'd be a much harder sell if this was, yes, we're going to do it. But right now, I want to see what they come up with.
I would agree. I need to see the final on this one. But I do want to thank Melissa Henshaw and whoever else was involved in looking for grant opportunities to increase the safety of visitors, but also to lower the liability of sit-ins when someone darts out in front of their car. And I think that's a huge one for me here, is trying to increase the safety for our residents at the same time. So thank you to Melissa for looking out for those grant opportunities. This is a very low match from the city, and it'll actually be $0 from the general fund. It'll all come from cruise ship money. So we appreciate the looking out and applying or getting these in front of the assembly. Anything else from the body? Sarah?
On the motion to approve resolution 2023-09 on first and final reading, Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiss?
Yes.
Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item F.
That'll bring us to item G.
I move to approve resolution 2023-11 on first and final reading, establishing a tourism task force.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Did the sponsors have a brief introduction for the item? If not, that's fine as well.
I guess nothing really new from last time, other
Okay.
than we took some of the suggestions through our discussion and applied them into this resolution.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment on resolution 23-11?
Richard Ween, and thank you for changing the chair. This is much more comfortable. Thank you, Dan. This concerns the resolution related to the Tourism Task Force. And there are a couple of small issues. One, you have to look at the membership. There's one person from STA, one from Ports and Harbors, one from Lincoln Street Business, one from Tours and Attractions, one from Business in General, and one from the Sitka Cruise Terminal. Also, there are a couple of ex officios, such as Visit Sitka, AKA Cruise, and the planning and community development will be ex officios. There will be a staff liaison and staff help. Of interest, there are only 2 community members at large. So if you look at this, you can really kind of imagine, please imagine this for a moment, that this is really heavily weighted towards business. One of the important things about community at large, I don't think anybody really ever asked the citizens of this town as to what level of tourism they want. Or even were part of any of the planning. It was just kind of foisted upon this town with the notion that, again, you know, money would become flowing as will the oil from the Willow project. The important thing here is that I think that they should increase the number of community members at large to at least 4. To have some parity with business, because as they say, we live here. And so I think that that's important. Clearly, what businesses want is more business, and they're interested parties, and they may not have the view of the regular run-of-the-mill citizen. And that's why I feel that you need to take care of the foundation issues first before you have a tourism task force. And to me, the basic issue, foundational issue, is how many tourists should really be coming in to Sitka. And once you solve that, then all of this stuff may become not as important. And so, but if you decide on having this and having business have a say, then what will happen is they will then make the excuse, well, we plan 2-3 years in advance. We've heard that before. So they have 500,000, you know, this year, and it'll be years before we can adjust this. And I just feel that again, the task force, it's a foregone conclusion. It'll be whatever anybody wants. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for resolution 23-11? Bring it back to the assembly for discussion.
I guess I would like to make one comment about the seating. I'm sure all of us have read the multiple emails that we've gotten, and I've had plenty of people talk to me personally. And considering I've had complaints about how the seats are favored one way or the other from both sides, I feel as like we've met a good equilibrium, at least close, because no one's happy. And I think that that's a good place to be. You know, hopefully with that, we get good discussion and some good, interesting results. The one thing, talking to some of these industry people that are interested in becoming one of these seats is a lot of them actually agree that they don't want this to become cruising land. That there is some sort of limit. So I think that's the best way to find some sort of compromise, if there is one to be had, is having the industry involved in creating that compromise. So yeah, I'm optimistic that we'll see lots of good stuff coming out of this task force and potentially commission in the future.
Yeah, I'm, I don't have a problem with this. I think it is doing a disservice to some of our business owners to say that they're just going to be mouthpieces for the tourism industry. If I were a business owner in the town, I would be greatly offended by that. Not the, and so, I guess I have some reservations as to how effective this is going to be. But on it, I think we can, it'll be good for, I guess, doing what the short-term plan did, which is figuring out where we can do better. But as far as addressing levels of tourism, Sitka, I don't think, honestly, it'll have the power to do much about that. But there's going to be constant work talking about things, about lots of things. Everything from the crosswalks we talked tonight to what levels we close downtown, or do we close downtown, that kind of thing. And it'll be good to take that off the plate of the planning commission. So I expect this to turn into a commission eventually. So I think it has a pretty good mix.
Tim?
Thank you. Yeah, the last two resolutions and this one, I think, are examples of first steps. I think we're taking the first steps down the road on exploring the crosswalks and so forth. Those are pretty not as important as this, but I see this as the first step to taking the temperature of the community on these sorts of issues. And I concur with Tor. The people on this task force will be Sitkans first, and then they fill other roles in our community. And I think they all have the best interests of Sitka at heart. That's my belief. And I think this task force will bear that out.
I just have, two things, I guess. First, I want to thank the sponsors for incorporating the majority of the feedback that they got from the assembly. When I read this document, it seemed to mirror our conversations pretty closely. So thank you for taking that to heart and then producing a document that mirrored the discussion that we may or may not all agree on, but I think it'll gather some consensus. The one question I did have when on line 27, be it further resolved, all of those appointments consist of shall, and the word shall means that you have to have that person on there. So I just want to make sure, like in the instance of Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal, that we contacted Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal and they are interested in participating, and all the other groups as well, because if not, the word shall doesn't give us any leeway to appoint someone else, and we may end up with a 3-3 type vote. So I just want to make sure that there is interest from those groups, that they will be filled, because that shall is binding there.
Correct. We have been contacted.
Perfect. That alleviates that concern then, because then the strength of the word ensures that group will have a seat at the table as time goes on. So alleviates my concern. Thank you. Crystal?
Mine just has to do with the sample application. I know that we had talked about amending that form slightly so that people would designate what category they represent. I think the title for Lincoln Street Business is still on there, but I know that will be updated to the downtown business corridor. And then the business owner general is something that you guys added to this resolution and it's not listed there. So just a slight amendment there.
Perfect. Thank you. I did see the Lincoln Street one, and I think we got an email about it, but I did not notice the business in general. Sarah, you got a note on that one? Perfect. Thank you. Anything else from the body? Sarah?
On the motion to approve resolution 2023-11 on first and final reading, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Ms. Carlson
Yes.
and Mr. Pike.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item G.
That'll bring us to persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item on or off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual. I don't know if that's going to count as 2 individuals or. We'll put a gate guard at the door. On the very bottom, there you go.
For the record, my name is Lauren Wild. I was born and raised in Sitka. I'm a parent to a 1.5-year-old, as you can see. I'm here tonight to talk to you about childcare in Sitka. I'd like to reemphasize to you that the childcare crisis is ever present for hundreds of families in Sitka every day, and that any way you look at it, something needs to be done at the local level. There are a lot of local groups working on this in Sitka, but so far it isn't enough. I believe the city of Sitka needs to invest in our youngest people and have a line item in the budget that includes childcare. The details of how that happens can take shape as this conversation progresses. But I think city support in the form of funding is needed at this point as an investment in the future of our community. I've made a little fact sheet that I will share with by talking to childcare providers that I'll leave with Sarah. I think is that the way it works? That kind of highlights where we're at in Sitka. For infants and toddlers, there are only 2 options for licensed childcare facilities, Betty Eliason and SJ Childcare Center. Betty E is the only one for infants, and they've got 8 spots. For toddlers, between the 2 facilities, there are 15 spots. That's in all of Sitka. For my data gathering, there's about 120 infants and 120 toddlers in Sitka. Sorry. So that's 7% for infants and 12% for toddlers. And that's childcare spots in Sitka, which to me is just not enough. And speaks to not being able to raise a family here anymore, people leaving, losing kind of that downward spiral of losing the economy and jobs in Sitka because of our young people. My push towards finding solutions. Sorry, I'm probably running over. Threadalaska.org is a great resource for both parents that are looking for child care in Alaska and also for potential employers looking to start child care businesses and for current employers to access training, certification, reimbursement, and financial assistance. Thread Alaska has already done a lot of the work, and we can use this by putting together, they've put together career ladders with different job levels and descriptions. They've put together wage and compensation models for Alaska's early care and education system. So for anybody listening right now, how can people get involved? The best way is the Early Childhood Coalition, or ECC. The Child Care Now group was also formed from the Sitka Health Summit's annual meeting, which is part of the priority for this year. And that's part of the ECC. I've been attending the meetings to learn more. I'd really encourage one of our assembly members to sit in on a few meetings just to learn more. The meetings are Tuesdays for 30 minutes from 10 to 10:30 in the morning on Zoom. I suggest that since childcare is on the city's strategic plan, I think, I'm not sure which commissioner group has been, oh, sorry. That is the end.
Yeah,
So,
that
okay,
is
I'll stop
time.
there.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments this
Okay.
evening, though. Thank you.
Thank you. And then just leave these.
Appreciate the multitasking as well. And yes, if you leave your documents with Sarah, she'll be able to get those to the assembly.
Thank you.
Anyone else to address the assembly tonight on or off the agenda?
Richard Ween, well, I don't know the name of that future assembly member who's here. He's attracted to the roar of the grease paint and the roar of the crowd. I'd like to continue with the childcare issue for a moment, and that is childcare is very important. I know places like Search used to have childcare, and I know it's been very difficult. And we all talk about housing as being an attractant for people to come here, but so is childcare. The question is, what is the solution? I think that it is kind of a slippery slope to incorporate line item childcare to the city. The city has three main aspects, and that's education, public safety, and infrastructure. And I also know that they need to recruit people here to work. The bottom line is that if it is a item, then I think all individuals within the city who in essence have children of their workers, I think that everybody needs to kick in proportionately and then to develop some citywide plan. Clearly, this is a issue related to the entire country. There is a solution out there, but I think it's have to be very careful as how deeply involved the city gets with that. Clearly, last time they were talking about job recruitment. Maybe they can add a taste in monetary for childcare, and that can go into some central fund. The other aspects that we have today is the word that I'd like to express to you is something called moral hazard. And a moral hazard is something that somebody will do something, but will not necessarily be responsible for it. And what we've seen with this most recent bankruptcy is an example of moral hazard. And this is something that is really needs to be looked at quite hard because of the way the federal government is handling this, and the way certain individuals will actually be benefiting. It is a bailout of the Silicon Valley Bank, also the Signature Bank and the Silvergate Bank. And it's not anything that's not going to cost taxpayers anything, because these are based on fees, the FDIC, and so it'll all be passed on to you. And this, at the end of the day, will affect Sitka as the economy tanks. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening?
Laurie Boysa. I'm the Director of Visit Sitka, and I wanted to say thank you for all of the hard work that you have been doing as a body towards developing the Tourism Task Force. I know that we have a lot of different opinions in town as to how we should move forward as a community, but I really think that giving the community a voice and to share their opinions and to share their ideas and to participate in the way we move forward as a community is really important. And I really believe that if we can work together as a community, we can find some really great solutions. So I wanted to just say thank you to each and every one of you for the work you've done on this. And I really look forward to working together as we move through this process. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard? Seeing none, that'll bring us to reports. For my report this evening, I'm sure John will cover some of this as well, as it was kind of the highlight of our last week. Recently returned from our DC legislative trip. This one fortunately was spread out onto a course of 3 days as opposed to 2 like the last one was. So I actually had a chance to get our senators and our representative, and then multiple different agencies as well. I think all of those meetings were productive. I believe that we got at least one tidbit out of every meeting that we wouldn't have gotten if we hadn't been in person, with either a lead to follow up on or a new program. There's some exciting programs coming out of Department of Energy for hydroelectric, especially one, I believe it's 242, that if we apply for and receive, which has a lot of money right now, it has the potential to subsidize our utility rates by 1.9 cent per kilowatt hour. Quite a substantial benefit there for the citizens. Kevin, we did get some cards as well. We'll have those scanned and out to the assembly that they gave us a quick and easy like cheat sheet for those programs. So we'll get those out to the assembly. What else were the big ones? I'm sure John will do a bit better fill in on that. Genevieve from Blank Rome took copious amounts of notes as she always does. So she said, give her a little bit to compile those and then we'll get those out to the assembly as well. So that'll be a complete overview there. Blank Rome also learned of some potential opportunities for funding for the municipality, which they're going to follow up on and see if it's worth it to pursue. I know in the past, the cost of a lobbyist has been a question and concern for this body. I will say now that Blank Rome has been working with the municipality for some time, it was amazing to see their performance in the meeting. CJ Zane was there at every single meeting as well. I was really able to lead those discussions in a way that the municipality benefited from, now that he knows us and has been working with us for quite some time. In Representative Peltola's office, she also commended him for his institutional knowledge, because he was keeping her on track, and she appreciated that with deadlines and such, because he's been around for so long, he understands the system well. So she's actually leaning on him for some guidance as well. So I think it was a good trip. I think it was worth our time to include the 6-hour plane ride each way, which was not the highlight of the trip. But John?
Thanks, Mayor. You hit most of it. I was taking notes before we started to hit some of the higher points. And as you said, Blank Rome is putting some notes together, and we have some due outs in there that we need to provide back to them based on what we've learned. So I'll do a rapid fire here. We sat down with EPA and we discussed the 301H waiver. It looks like, and that's for the effluent discharge, the secondary treatment at the wastewater treatment plant. It looks like I'm in a scenario that we had with Green Lake and the Section 24 withdrawal, where I've got agencies pointing at each other. I've talked to DEC and they say, oh, this is an EPA issue. You need to go talk to EPA. And then I talk to EPA and say, no, this is a DEC issue. You guys set the water quality standards. So it's time to get everybody in the room and get a final answer here. So we met with FERC, talked about the Green Lake Section 24 withdrawal. That's the project area around hydro that potentially opens up some land. We still have non-objection from Bureau of Land Management and Forest Service. So that's just a FERC application that that Blank Rome is assisting Melissa Henshaw putting together. So we've got some surveying going on right now to identify that area. Department of Energy, we talked about the Section 242, 243, and 247. That's on that card that we'll share. When we were in Senator Murkowski's office, we talked through our legislative priorities, and I love that at the very end of the meeting, she just said, what are your 2? She said, give me 2 right now, just bottom line. What are the things I can help you with? And I said, hydro and haul out. And she said, okay, H squared for Sitka. That's what we're going to be looking at. So talked to Senator Sullivan and we discussed the Coast Guard FRC. We discussed a lot on the Western, or the WFC, I can't remember what it stands for, the fisheries lawsuit. Talked a lot about that, talked about the amicus brief, and everybody is now involved in that. And same thing in Representative Peltola's office. We talked about Elias and Harbor, the electrical project there. Again, we discussed the haul out, and we've talked to her chief of staff about that earlier in the year. And fisheries, met with the FAA and talked about the airport improvement project money and ways we could benefit there. Met with the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee. Went over a potential CODEL visit and or congressional delegation visit and trying to get them here in Sitka. Again, some Coast Guard issues, and we also talked about shipping alternatives in and out of the island. MARAD, they're the folks that analyze the RAISE and PIDP grants. We talked to them about that and some things we could pursue there. And finally, DOT, I believe, was on our last day, and we just talked overall grant opportunities and what's available for us. So when those notes come out from Blank Rome, I'll be sure to share them with everybody and some of our answers. So thanks.
Brian?
I still haven't hired a legal assistant. Well, I do have an applicant. There's some promising movement in that direction. Still accepting applications. Thank you.
Liaison representatives. Kevin?
I attended a school board meeting last week, or it was not actually a work session. Tim was there as well. They went over their kind of the nitty gritty of their budget and kind of difficulties that they are having in that they're facing a shortfall. And even if the state increases the base student allocation, they won't know until after will have had to make that. So those tough budget decisions. So that's kind of a work in progress with the school district. Thank you.
Crystal?
I have two reports. So the first one, Health Needs and Human Services. I think Lauren ran at a time when she was talking about whether or not there was an appropriate commission to field the question as it relates to childcare in Sitka. And I know that that was sent through to the Health Needs and Human Services at one point in time. So that feels like an appropriate place. And I just want to plug that they're going to be meeting tomorrow for the first time in quite a few months. They had some quorum issues, but with the recent addition of Elise Davidson Kitka and Annette Evans, tomorrow will be a meeting where they discuss 2023 goals, basically what they want to focus on throughout the remainder of the year. Also nominating their chair and vice chair, just some of those organizational issues that they would typically do a little bit earlier in the year. So that one, again, is going to be tomorrow at noon here at Harrigan Centennial Hall, and there are 3 commission vacancies. So if anybody has an interest in the area of health needs or human services, it might be a great time to submit an application to Jesser and Shaw. And then the second one has to do with the Library Commission. And of course, we all remember the proclamation that just came to us 1 month ago, declaring that there's a 100-year celebration that we're embarking upon. So I really want to stress one event in particular that's happening on April 1st. It's going to be a shared space between here and the library from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Come out. It's a community event. Lots of things will be happening. And that's the main celebration. And then they have a number of events that are happening. I think I read those off, but I just wanted to let you know, you can drop into the library to find out what's coming in the next month, 2 months, or you can always check out the Facebook pages. They're posting events on the Friends of Sitka Public Library, and then Sitka Public Library. They also have their own Facebook page. So just keep an eye out for fun things that are happening in that context. And then of course they have 2 commission seats that are vacant. So if you have an interest in providing service to the community, that's one opportunity. And I just want to end out by saying Ganachish to Nicole Philippek, who her last meeting was March 10th, and we celebrated by having some chocolate truffles. So it was good that she was willing to provide that service, and we're going to miss her. So those are my reports.
And Chris, you had one?
Yeah, so at the last Harbor meeting, Harbor Commission voted to approve the 7.3% harbor rate increase. But there's definitely some concerns that this is not sustainable because these increases are basically projected to 2035 or whatever it is, which will more than double our current rate. So yeah, pretty big concerns on that front. And how do we address that? So brainstorming, I guess, is starting to happen again.
Any other liaison representatives? Sarah?
All right, so upcoming meetings, the Assembly has a work session with the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Sitka on Thursday night at 6 PM. It's their annual work session. We have a budget meeting on the enterprise funds Thursday, March 23rd at 6 PM, and then our regular meeting on Tuesday, March 28th. As Crystal was mentioning, we do have a number of vacancies on our commissions, health needs in particular. There's 3 vacancies right now. There's also vacancies on the Investment Committee, the Library Commission, Local Emergency Planning Committee, Parks and Rec, Tree and Landscape Committee, and the Animal Hearing Board. So if folks are interested, they can contact our office.
Thank you. Any other reports this evening? Seeing none, that would bring us to our executive session this evening.
I move to go into executive session to receive and discuss an update from the municipal attorney regarding legal and financial matters affecting the municipality as a result of the various pending lawsuits filed against the municipality. Gleason v. SCH CBS, Wampler v. McGrath CBS, Mace v. McGrath CBS, and Dick v. CBS SPD.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. Is there any public comment regarding going into executive session? Sarah?
All right, on the motion to go into executive session, Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
and Mr. Yestad.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0. We will be meeting in room 4.
Thank you, Assembly. Take your break as well, and then we'll meet in room 4 when able. Motion to reconvene as the assembly.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are reconvened as the assembly in regular session. This evening, the assembly did meet in executive session to hear an update on some longstanding cases that may have some progress, and then a new case that came before. The assembly was updated by our attorney, and the attorney received some feedback from the assembly. That would end our executive session this evening. Moves us to adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.